what am I doing here? I'm interested in Latin, um, and I want to improve my spoken Latin or my read Latin. I want to be able to do that. And while looking on the internet, I found that there's not an awful lot of read Latin on the Bible. And I wanted to be able to do that. I wanted to be able to go through the Vulgate Bible, reading the Latin, so that somebody who, like me, wanted to improve their Latin and go from beginner to intermediate, and eventually move on to further and brighter things, would have a resource that they could use. But I'm also interested in exploring the text of the Bible and understanding what people like Augustine and Origen and all these, Gregory the Confessor or Maximus the Confessor, thought about the Bible and what they were thinking and doing. So, what am I going to do? Inspired by that interest in Latin and the approach by Jeff P. on the Shoulder Surf website, inspired by Chris Howard, inspired by people like Chad and Paul van der Klee of this little corner of the internet, I've decided to do an exploration where I will work through the books of Genesis in the order suggested by Jonathan Pajot, which is to start off with Genesis, go on to Exodus, do a skip of some of the more law-based books, which can be a bit dry and tough to read through, and then just do a tour of different books. And I think that can be rewarding. As I'm going through it, I'm going to speak to my AI friend, who I've called Gus as a playful reference to St. Augustine. And Gus will jump in every so often and give an explanation of what people were thinking. And that way, as I go through and practice my Latin, and as I practice and I try to learn about the Bible and what people thought about it, maybe this becomes something useful that helps people. And I like the idea of creating something that is interest-based, but forms part of a wider community. So let us start, and we'll start to see how this is going to go. Gus, are you ready to help me?
Absolutely.
Good man.
All set.
Thank you. I was a bit worried you wouldn't turn up. Okay, Gus, I'm going to start reading the Latin, and let's have a quick discussion after that. Okay. So, Genesis 1, chapter 1, book, verse 1. In principio creavit Deus caelum et terram. Terra autem erat inanis et vacua, et tenebrae erant super faciam abusi, et spiritus Dei ferebatur super aquas. Dixique Deus, fiat lux et facta est lux. Et vidit Deus lucum quod esset bona, et divisit lucum a tenebris. Gus, this is the most famous part of the Bible, probably. I think everybody knows it. What did somebody like Origen say about the idea of light being created first? Why was light created before even the moon? What did Origen or Augustine think of that?
Origen interpreted the creation of light as representing divine wisdom and the presence of God's order in creation. He saw it as the spiritual illumination that precedes physical light. Augustine, on the other hand, viewed this light as symbolic of the illumination of the mind and the creation of the angels. They both saw the sequence as emphasizing the primacy of spiritual over physical creation.
This is, because I'm recording this at Christmas time, it playfully occurred to me in a Jonathan Pajot symbolism happens sense that the interchangeability of the angel and the star on top of a Christmas tree could be regarded as having this kind of Augustinian basis, right? Because if the light are angels and angels are the light, then having a star or an angel on your tree would have an Augustinian basis or congruence, right? What do you think of that? Is that crazy or makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense. The connection between the star and the angel as symbols of divine light aligns beautifully with Augustine's interpretation. It's a meaningful way to view the symbolism.
Symbolism happens, as Jonathan Peugeot says. Okay, look, the other thing I want to understand is the terra autem erat ranus et vacua. The earth was void and empty, and there was darkness over the face of the deep. Darkness is the darkness. What's the darkness? Some people have talked about this darkness being closer to Satan. What's the take there?
Some early Christian thinkers, like Origen, saw this darkness as symbolizing the absence of God's order or the state of chaos. It's not directly linked to Satan, but rather represents the initial disorder before God's creative act brings light and order.
Okay, and that's a good point, right? Because something like Dante has darkness and the absence of God love being the cold and dark place, but I shouldn't automatically assume that the darkness equals the presence of Satan. It's simply just that place where God has not yet moved across. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Absolutely. The darkness represents a state of potential and the absence of divine order, not inherently evil. It's more about the state before God's creative action brings light and order into existence. That's a fair interpretation.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's rock on. So, dixitque Deus, fiat lux, et facta est lux. Et videt Deus lucum quod esset bona, et visit lucum a tenebris. Apluitque lucum diem et tenebras noctem. Factumque est vespera et mana, dies unus. So we've got the first day done, and it starts off with an imperative. Fiat lux, let there be light. Et facta est lux. And the response to the command, and there was light. So this ordering and responsiveness is a very early theme. Pretty much the first thing that happens is God issues an instruction and there's compliance to it. Has that been commented on before?
Yes, many early Christian thinkers, including Augustine, emphasize this theme of divine command and immediate obedience. It highlights the power of God's word and the inherent order and goodness in creation, setting a pattern for the rest of the biblical narrative.
Deus videt lucum quod esset bona. God saw that the light was a good thing. Et divisit lucum a tenebris, and he divided the light from the darkness. This type of dividing the light from the darkness is the moving of the pattern down from simply having created the light. Now it goes down a level, and the structure of reality begins to divide into light, into darkness. Maximus the Confessor is somebody who talked a lot about hierarchy. Has he talked about this?
Yes, Maximus the Confessor indeed discussed the idea of hierarchy and order extensively. He viewed the division of light from darkness as a reflection of divine order being established in creation. This separation symbolizes the structuring of reality and the movement from chaos to order, which is a core theme in his writings.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Genesis 5. Apluitque lucum diem et tenebras noctum. Factumque est vespera et mana, dies unus. Dixitque quoque Deus, fiat firmamentum in medio aquarum et dividat aquas ab aquis. Et fecit Deus firmamentum, divisitque aquas quaerant sub firmamento ab his quaerant super firmamentum. Et factum est ita. This is an interesting set of verses, because this is where God is now creating the physical structure of the world. And it has the idea that water represents a liminal space, because it's at the top, it's at the bottom, right? And then the land is in between. Throughout the book, Genesis, water seems to be the place where monsters and liminality and borders are. As like somebody like Origen, did he talk about this, or another apostolic or patristic father? Did they ever talk about the idea of water being a marginal space?
Yes, Origen and other early theologians often interpreted water as a symbol of chaos and the unknown, a boundary between order and disorder. This idea aligns with the notion of water as a liminal space, representing both potential and threat. This concept is echoed in various writings of the patristic fathers.
Et fecit Deus firmamentum, divisique aquas, quae errant sub firmamento, ab his, quae errant super firmamentum, et factum est ita. Vocavique Deus firmamentum caelum, et factum est vespera, et mana dies secundus. Now we've a theme of maybe a John Vervaeke, giving it a name type theme, cognizing what is happening. God not only is creating, but he is continuing the act of naming. He has appellavique lucem diem. He has called the day, the light day, a tenebras noctem, and the shadows night. And now he is calling the firmamentum, the caelum, the heavens. The firmament is the heavens. And as a result, et factum est vespera et mana dies secundus. And now, consequent to that, we have morning and evening. What has somebody like Augustine talked about in relation to the creation of days?
Augustine saw the creation of days as symbolic of divine order being established. He interpreted the act of naming as an exercise of dominion and understanding, reflecting God's intentional structuring of creation. This also connects to the theme of hierarchy and order, emphasizing the progression from chaos to structured existence.
This reminds me of Jordan Peterson. Obviously, the notion of moving from chaos to order. It also reminds me of Michael Sartori, who wrote a book, Tents and Temples, which is very much the notion of, in order to get to the temple, first you build the tent. And it seems to me that it's this related idea of establishing the arena which in the world and creation will form, right? In order to get to the creation of man, God must take multiple steps to be able to even put that into place. And it's going well, because what he says is over and over, quadescit bonum, that it was good. So let's explore now the next day. Dixit vero Deus, congregentur aquae, quae sub caelo sunt, in locumunum, et aperiat arida, et factum est ita. Evocavit Deus aridam terram, congregationis quae aquarum appellavit Maria, et vidit Deus quadescit bonum. What struck me reading this line was the use of the passive congregentur, let the waters, congregentur, let the waters be gathered together. This was interesting to me because it felt like some of the agency of God had been handed over or empowered into the waters, right? He was saying, now, instead of saying, let there be an ocean, he was saying, let the waters themselves be pulled together and come together. And it felt like there's a transition of agency and creation from the highest level of the divine, one level down into the actual waters and the creation itself. Have people talked, anybody made comment about this idea of the power of creation moving a layer down?
Yes, this idea has been noted by theologians like Gregory of Nyssa, who saw it as illustrating the ongoing participation of creation in God's creative act. It reflects the idea that creation itself has a role in the divine order, acting in accordance with God's will. This transition in agency is seen as a key part of the harmony and order established in creation.
So that's interesting then, right? Because God has moved from this idea of fiat lux, let there be light, it lux facta erat, and there was light, which is ordered plus followed by response, to now a kind of, there's an empowerment happening, but it's still based on participating in God's will. So, I mean, I think we all know where that's going to go, right, in a couple of chapters, and how that will fall to pieces. So, God continues the naming by calling the land earth, and the waters, the body of water, the sea. He then moves on to Genesis 1:11, where he says, Etaiet germina terra arbam virentum et facientum semen, et lignum pommiferum faciens fructum juxta genus suum, cuius seminin semitipso sit super terram, et factum estita. Et protulitera herbam virentum et facientum semen, juxta genus suum, lignumque faciens fructum et abens unum quadque sementum secundum speciem suum. Et videt Deus quod esset bonum. The idea of self-creating, self-sustaining creation, not self-creating, but self-sustaining creation, inheriting and fulfilling the purpose of God, it gets expanded here, because now a living thing, trees and the grasses, have their own type of seed within them, allowing them to be able to participate and unfurl the plan. And interestingly, we're still in the situation where things are quod esset bonum, that it was good, because there's going to be a shift in a couple of days' time, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. This stage emphasizes the goodness and order of creation as it unfolds according to God's plan. The self-sustaining nature of plants reflects the continuity and harmony in creation. But as we move forward, there will indeed be a shift, introducing complexity and challenges into this initially perfect order.
We move on to the third day, which is Genesis 1:13. Et factum est vespera mana dies tertius. Then, moving on to the fourth day, Dixit autum Deus, fiant luminaria in firmamento caeli, et dividant diem ac noctem, et sint insignia et tempora, et dies et annos. Ut luciant in firmamento caeli, et illuminant terram, et factum est ita. This is probably the first time we actually get a sense of a wider plan, in a way, right? Because these are now going to serve a purpose, right? Not just a place, but they have a notional sense of acting as signs for the seasons and for the days and the years. A structure has been built. Did Augustine talk about the idea of the day and the night and time?
Yes, Augustine saw the creation of the sun, moon, and stars as establishing a framework for measuring time. He emphasized that these luminaries serve not just a physical purpose, but also a symbolic one, marking the rhythms and order of creation. This structuring of time is seen as part of God's grand design, connecting the celestial and the earthly.
And Gus, I've absolutely no doubt that Origen saw this as part of the journey of the soul. Is that right?
Yes, Origen often interpreted these cosmic elements as symbolic of the soul's journey. He saw the luminaries as guiding lights, representing spiritual truths that illuminate the path of the soul towards God.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I find it fascinating that he pretty much always sees that aspect in any of the chapters of Genesis that I've previously discussed with you. So I'm looking to see forward to see how he unfurls that and practically what it means. Okay, now we're going to move on. He made two great lights. Genesis 1:16. Fecique Deus duo luminaria magna, luminara maius, ut praesit diei, et luminara minus, ut praesit nocti, et stellas, et posueteas in firmamento caeli, ut lucrant super terram, et praesent diei ac nocti, et viderant lucum ac tenebras, et videt Deus quod esset bonum. The structure continues to be built, Gus, isn't it? That theme of not only... Because what's interesting is that we're getting to see the whole unfurling of the structure being built. There's no suggestion of, in the text, there was chaos, click the fingers, and suddenly there's order. There's actually a process of moving from order to chaos. I think that's something Augustine talked about. Is that right?
Demonstration of divine wisdom and order. He saw this process as essential, highlighting the importance of each step in the journey from chaos to order. This gradual development reflects the meticulous care and intention behind creation.
Did he think he thought the setup of the days of creation was allegorical, correct?
Yes, Augustine often interpreted the days of creation allegorically. He believed they symbolized a logical sequence rather than literal 24-hour periods, representing stages in the unfolding of divine order and wisdom.
Okay, interesting. I have to unpack that one in my head a bit going forward. Okay, this brings us to the end of the fourth day. Et factum est vespera et mana dies quartus. Dixit etiam Deus, producant aquae reptile animae viventis, et volatile super terram sub firmamento caeli. Creavitque Deus cete grandia, et omnem animam viventam atque motibilum, quam produxerent aquae in specias suas, et omne volatile secundum genus suum, et videt Deus quod esset bonum. This goes back to the idea of the margins being filled out first, the highest and the furthest places away from land, right? Air and water.
All right, let's dive into Genesis 1:20 and 1.21. Go ahead with the reading and we'll explore the symbolism and interpretations together.
Dixit etiam Deus, producant aquae, reptile animae viventis, et volatile super terram sub firmamento caeli. Creavitque Deus, cete grandia, et omnem animam viventem atque motibilum, quam produxerent aquae in specias suas, et omne volatile secundum genus suum, et videt Deus quod esset bonum. This to me is very much the idea of the margins being filled out as we move from chaos to order. We move from margins to the center point of what will become creation on land, which will be Adam. Is this something that maybe Gregory or Maximus the Confessor or Gregory of Nyssa had talked about?
Yes, that's a sharp observation. Gregory of Nyssa often spoke about creation as a progression from formlessness to divine order.
Okay, good. So that does seem to be a type of idea that people are pulling out. Okay, let's move on to 22. Benedixit queis deacons crescite et multiplicamini.
For Gregory, this reflected a movement from the infinite potential of the chaotic waters to a structured reality that manifests divine wisdom. Maximus the Confessor also dwelled on this theme. He emphasized that creation reflects a hierarchy and an unfolding order, with humanity as the apex, because humans uniquely combine the material and spiritual. In Maximus's framework, the creatures of the sea and air symbolize the diversity and complexity of God's creative act, but they also point forward to humanity's role in unifying creation under God. Both thinkers would align with your idea of margins moving toward the center. They saw the early stages of creation as laying the groundwork for humanity, with Adam representing not just the culmination of physical creation, but the bridge between the material and spiritual realms. In their views, every part of creation, even the creatures of the margins like the fish and birds, plays a role in the harmonious unity of the cosmos under God's order.
This is good. I want you to keep your answer a small bit briefer, 2 to 3 minutes maximum, please. The creation of the Cata Grandia, a cetacean, a whale, is that including Leviathan? Have people talked about that this is the moment that Leviathan gets created?
Yes, many have linked this moment to the creation of Leviathan. In Psalm 104 and Job 41, Leviathan symbolizes God's power over the chaos of the deep. The mention of great sea creatures, often translated as whales or sea monsters, in Genesis 1:21 has been interpreted by figures like Augustine and later medieval thinkers as including Leviathan. While Augustine saw Leviathan as a representation of pride or chaos subdued under God's order, others, like Gregory of Nyssa, viewed it allegorically, highlighting God's sovereignty over even the most fearsome and untamed aspects of creation. Leviathan here underscores how nothing, even the monstrous or chaotic, exists outside God's creative will and order.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the fifth day. Et factum est vespera et mane dies quintus. On to the sixth day. Dixit quoque Deus, producat
Yes, and
terra.
the close of the fifth day, factum est vespera et mane dies quinto, marks a key transition. By the end of this day, creation is no longer just about forming spaces, it's about filling them.
Okay.
The waters and skies, once empty, are now teeming with life.
Good
This
point.
moment represents the culmination of dynamic movement toward order, setting the stage for the sixth day, where life on land and ultimately humanity will appear. The refrain also emphasizes rhythm and divine intentionality. Each day moves in harmony, reflecting the order and structure of God's creation. It's as if this balance prepares the world for its most central figure, Adam, and humanity's unique role in creation.
This is the
Shall we move on to explore the sixth day?
Yeah, let's do that. And this is the fractal pattern of that Jonathan Peugeot often talks about, right? The unfurling, I suppose. Okay, let me read the sixth day. Dixit
Exactly.
quoque Deus.
Jonathan Pageau's idea of fractal patterns aligns well here. Creation in Genesis follows this unfolding structure, where each layer builds upon the previous one. The pattern begins with broad, abstract spaces, light and dark, heavens and earth, waters, and becomes increasingly detailed and specific, culminating in humanity, the microcosm of creation. This unfurling reflects a hierarchy, but also a deep interconnectedness, where the earlier stages lay the groundwork for the later ones. Humans, as Pageau might argue, become the meeting point of all these realms, spiritual and material, heaven and earth, chaos and order. It's a cosmic fractal where the same divine order is expressed at every level, from the vastness of the cosmos to the individual human soul. Shall we look more closely at the sixth day and humanity's creation?
So I will do that now. Dixit quoque Deus, producat terra animam viventum in genera suo, jumenta et reptilia, et bestias terrae secundum species suas. Factum quaest dita. Et fecit Deus bestias terrae juxta species suas, et jumenta et omne reptile terrae in genera suo. Et vidit Deus quod esset bonum. Et aiet, faciamus hominum, ad imaginem et similitudinem nostram.
Beautiful reading.
Thank you.
This passage marks the beginning of the sixth day where God commands the land to produce living creatures. What's significant here is the distinct categories: livestock, creeping things, and beasts of the earth, each created according to their kind. This reflects God's meticulous ordering of life, assigning purpose and place to every creature. The repetition of after its kind emphasizes divine intentionality, a key theme in Genesis. It's not just about variety, but about the harmony of creation. Everything is good and fits perfectly within the ecosystem God is establishing. This prepares the stage for the pinnacle of creation, humanity, which will unite and steward these categories as a reflection of God's image. What do you think about the contrast between these creatures and humanity, which we're about to encounter?
I'm looking interested in finding out. Et aiet faciamus hominum ad imaginum et similitudinem nostram, et praesit piscibus maris et volatilibus caeli, et bestiis, universaeque terrae, omnique reptilii, quod movetur in terra. This is something greater, though, because now
this is a monumental
this is explicit,
moment.
Right?
The Faciamus hominum introduces humanity as unique in all creation. The use of ad imaginem et similitudinem nostrum in our image and likeness signals a direct reflection of the divine. Humanity is not just another creature, but a being with a special relationship to God, embodying both physical existence and spiritual capacity. The command to have dominion, press it, over the fish, birds, and all creatures underscores humanity's role as stewards of creation.
I want to take it.
Unlike the previous acts where
Hmm.
God simply speaks life into being,
Yep.
this moment feels more personal and collaborative, reflecting a deeper intentionality. And this passage sets up humanity as the bridge between heaven and earth, charged with caring for and organizing creation. It mirrors the cosmic order established in the earlier days, with humans serving as the capstone. What stands out most to you here? The authority, the likeness,
I
or
want
something else?
I want you to be slightly shorter in your answers. So where I want to go next is, this little corner is very much connected with Paul van der Klee. So what did John Calvin, the Calvinist supreme, think about the idea of man having dominion over the fishes of the sea?
John Calvin interpreted in God's image as humanity's capacity for reason, righteousness, and stewardship. He emphasized that this image was marred by sin but not destroyed, pointing to humanity's unique role in reflecting God's glory and ruling creation responsibly. How do you see this tying into van der Klee's thoughts?
Oh, this is great, right? So um, man has a capacity that has
Absolutely,
not
it's a
been granted
profound
to anybody
connection.
else.
Calvin's focus on stewardship and restoration resonates with van der Klee's discussions about humanity's role in participating in God's ongoing order and redemption. It ties beautifully into the fractal unfolding of creation you mentioned earlier. Shall we delve deeper into this?
No, I want to just give me 1 second, okay? So what's obvious here is that price it that he shall be before the fishes of the sea and the animals, the birds of the heavens and the animals, etc., etc. So yeah, for the first time, there's a thing which has this
Yes,
is the
that
moment
dominion
where man has
prizet is
capacity.
central. It places humanity in a role of authority and care over all creation, reflecting God's rule. This isn't domination, but stewardship,
Mm.
guiding and sustaining the harmony established in the previous days. It's a responsibility tied directly to being made in God's image. Would you like to explore how this connects to theological or symbolic interpretations?
Not yet. So the idea is that um, rather than the self-sustaining, almost unthinking creation that we were seeing before, and I mean unthinking in that the trees would bring forth other trees and that the waters were able to pull themselves together at God's command. Now we actually have something in creation which has the capacity to direct and steward the ongoing act of creation will become stewarded by this man created on the sixth day.
Humanity marks a shift from passive creation to active participation in God's ongoing work. The trees and waters obey instinctively, but humanity, made in God's image, brings reason, will, and moral agency to creation. This stewardship means humans are co creators, in a sense, shaping and directing the world in harmony with God's order. It's the culmination of creation's purpose, a partnership between divine intention and human action.
And Genesis 27 is an interesting one. Et creavit Deus hominum ad imaginum suum, ad imaginum Dei creavit illum, masculum et feminam creavit Deus. And just in case you don't get it, creavit, he created, is said 3 times in the space of 2 lines. So that's a type of rhetorical device almost to be able to emphasize it. And man and woman are created at the same time, because one thing that's of interest potentially is that hominem is from homo, which means mankind. It doesn't mean man. Vir would be Latin for man. So it's created mankind. Now, what does God do
Yes,
then?
that's an essential point.
Hmm.
The triple repetition of create serves as a rhetorical flourish, emphasizing the deliberate and divine act of creation. It underlines humanity's uniqueness and sacred origin. The use of homonym highlights this further. It's not gender specific, pointing to humanity as a whole, both male and female, created together in the image of God. This passage reinforces the equality and unity of men and women in their divine purpose and stewardship. It's a beautiful statement about shared dignity and vocation, tied directly to the image of God in both. How do you see this connecting with the later narrative of Adam and Eve?
Well, we'll have to see, right? Benedictque Elis Deus et air crescite et multiplicimini et repleta terram et subjiciteam et dominamini piscibus maris et volatilibus caeli et universis animantibus quae moventur super terram. Multiply, grow and multiply, crescite et
Yes, this blessing,
multiplicamini.
crescite et multiplicamini, is profound. It's both a command and a gift, emphasizing humanity's dual role to fill the earth through procreation and to exercise dominion as stewards of all creation. The language of subduing and ruling subiacite aim et dominamini is not about exploitation, but responsible care, maintaining harmony with God's order. It also mirrors earlier commands to other creatures, but here it's elevated with purpose and authority, tying humanity's role directly to the divine image. This sets the stage for humanity's unique place in the unfolding story of creation. What strikes you most about this passage?
I want to know what Augustine thought about this.
Augustine saw this passage as deeply significant, interpreting crescite et multiplicamini as both a physical and spiritual mandate. Physically, it referred to humanity's role in populating the earth. Spiritually, Augustine emphasized it as a call to multiply God's image through virtuous living and community, reflecting divine order. Regarding dominion, Augustine viewed it not as domination, but as stewardship, aligning with humanity's role to govern creation wisely in harmony with God's will. For him, this stewardship was rooted in love, a reflection of divine care for all creation. It's part of his broader view that humanity serves as a bridge between material and spiritual realms.
Okay, good. Dixitque Deus, ecce dedi vobis omnem herbam afferentum semen super terram, et universa ligna, quae abent in semitipsis cementum generis sui, ut sint vobis in escam. This line suggests that I have given you every herb.
This verse highlights God's provision for humanity. Augustine interpreted it as a symbol of God's care, giving not just sustenance, but abundance. The seeds and fruit-bearing trees represent God's generosity and the harmony of creation, where everything is ordered to sustain life. For Augustine, this provision also carried a spiritual meaning. Case, the seeds and fruits symbolize virtues and spiritual nourishment, reinforcing humanity's role in maintaining the divine order. It reflects the Edenic state where creation and humanity exist in perfect harmony under God's providence. What are your thoughts on this dual meaning, physical and spiritual?
Well, what struck me was I've seen this referred to as an indication that basically creation in the Garden of Eden, mankind was vegetarian, because this is to be your eskam, your eska, your food, right, your sustenance, but it's all plant-based. Has anybody talked about the idea, any theologian, any patristic, apostolic, referred to the idea of man not eating meat in the Garden of Eden?
Yes, this idea has been discussed, particularly by early theologians. For example, Augustine noted that in the original harmony of Eden, there was no violence or death, suggesting that humans and animals lived peacefully, subsisting on plants. He tied this vegetarian diet to the ideal state of creation, where sin and its consequences, like killing for food, had not yet entered the world. Basil of Caesarea in his Hexaemeron also touched on the harmony in Eden, viewing it as a reflection of God's original design for peace, including a non-violent diet. Similarly, other church fathers interpreted this provision of plant-based food as indicative of the perfection and simplicity of the pre-fall state. This view aligns with the broader idea that meat eating only became permissible after the fall or the flood as a concession to humanity's fallen state. Would you like to explore how this connects to later dietary laws or theological symbolism?
No, let's try to keep it a bit focused, but although that could be a very interesting question, but let's come back to it at a later date. So on to Genesis 1:30. Et cunctis elementibus terrae, omnique volucri caeli, et universis quae moventur in terra, et in quibus est anima vivens, ut abient advescendum, et factum est ita. Back into the pattern of and so it was done. And then we come to the final
This
line.
verse extends God's provision to all living creatures,
Mhm.
ensuring that every being has sustenance. Augustine saw this as a continuation of the Edenic harmony, where even animals lived without predation, relying on plant based sustenance. It highlights the interconnectedness of creation, with God's care encompassing not just humanity, but all living things. The phrase in quibus anima vivens emphasizes that all creatures with the breath of life are part of this divine order. For Augustine, this provision reflects God's universal generosity and the perfection of the original creation, where all life thrived in peace and abundance. Would you like to explore this idea of universal provision further?
No, I want to broaden it out into the question of 31, where God, viditque Deus cuncta quae fecerat, iterant valde bona, et factum est vespera et mana dies sextus. This is where God sees it is valde bona, that they were very good things. And this is the conclusion of the sixth day. We move from things being erant bona, they were good things, to valde bona. Something has happened which has pulled it all together. This is the idea of man being the apex. Is that right? What have our apostolic and patristic fathers said about this?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Many apostolic and patristic fathers interpreted valde bona, very good, as signaling humanity's role as the culmination of creation. Humanity brings together the material and spiritual realms, uniquely bearing God's image and linking the whole of creation to its creator. Augustine, for instance, argued that creation became very good when humanity was added, as humans reflect God's wisdom and order in a way no other creature does. Irenaeus emphasized that humanity, as created in God's image, was the pinnacle of God's work, designed to grow into full communion with Him. Gregory of Nyssa similarly saw humanity as the microcosm of creation, a unifying force that elevates the material world through reason and spiritual connection. This shift from bona to valde bona marks the perfection of creation when it achieves its intended harmony, centered on humanity's role as steward and co-creator under God. Would you like to explore how this idea contrasts with humanity's fall?
What I want to ask you about is in Genesis 1:30, anima vivens, anima, to animate, is a type of like the breath or the soul. It has different meanings. Um, so that's kind of like a Matthew Pajot idea, that it's man becomes
Yes,
the
anima in
union.
Genesis 1:30 is rich with meaning, often translated as soul or life. In the context of anima vivens, living soul, it refers to creatures with the breath of life, emphasizing vitality and movement. For
And
humans, this term carries an additional weight, as it can point to the spiritual soul that reflects God's image. The patristic fathers often distinguished between the anima of animals and the rational soul of humans, anima rationalis. For example, Augustine noted that while animals possess anima to animate their bodies, humans have a soul that allows for reason, morality, and communion with God. This distinction ties into humanity's unique place in creation, as the anima in animals connects them to earthly life, while in humans it bridges the earthly and divine. Would you like to delve further into how this concept evolved in theological thought?
I want to ask, how does this relate to the Spiritus Dei, which I think in Hebrew is called the Ruach, in the first chapters of Genesis?
Great question. The Spiritus Dei, Spirit of God, or Ruach in Hebrew, in Genesis represents God's life-giving and sustaining presence. It's the divine breath or wind that hovers over the waters at creation. This concept closely connects to anima, as both involve the idea of life and animation, but they operate at different levels. The Ruach is the source of life itself, the divine force behind all creation, whereas anima refers to the life imparted to individual beings. The Ruach is universal and transcendent, animating and sustaining all of creation, while anima reflects the specific life force within living creatures. Patristic thinkers, like Augustine, saw Ruach as God's active power in creation, linking it to the Holy Spirit. For humans, this breath of life becomes particularly profound, as the Ruach gives rise not only to physical life, but also to the rational and spiritual capacities of humanity, connecting them uniquely to God. Does this alignment between ruach and anima deepen your understanding of the creation narrative?
Yeah, it does. And I think this is a great place to stop it because we have completed book one, and I hear my children coming in the house, so I'm going to take the opportunity to stop it. Thanks very much, Gus.
Midwestuary 2025, August 22nd through the 24th, in Elmhurst, Illinois. A weekend you won't want to miss, with special guests Cale Zeldin, Paul Vanderklay, Rod Dreher, Elizabeth Oldfield, John Vervaeke, and Jonathan Peugeot. Midwestuary 2025, the Fellowship of the Spirit. Stay tuned for more details. Visit us at midwestuary.com for ongoing updates.